Your minutes from our previous meeting on September 14th were included in your packet. If I could get a motion from someone to approve those minutes.
Motion.
I have a motion. Can I get a second? Can someone give me a second?
Second.
Awesome. Thank you. Any revisions that anyone needs to make note of? All right. Without hearing any, I'll consider our minutes approved. We have a special little presentation put together this morning with the help of Teresa Salmon, who is the Executive Vice President of the Charlotte Regional Commercial Board of Realtors, as well as Marty McLaughlin, who is partner of Park Commercial Real Estate. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Teresa, to share your screen. And then Marty, if you would like to take it away.
Sure. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. As many of you know by now, Garth Dunklin passed away last week, and we'd just like to take a moment of silence on his behalf and show you this brief video. And then I just want to highlight a couple of his contributions to the industry afterward. So thank you for your. Thank you, Teresa. We lost really a good person last week. I mean, words can't describe what Garth did for the commercial real estate industry and the real estate industry in the state, as well as for CRCBR. Only a few people knew he was ill. That was the way he wanted. In fact, he worked up until the moment he passed, which was last Saturday. For those of you that don't know what some of Garth's contributions, he was instrumental in the formation of this committee, the RCA, and to see that the commercial real estate industry had a voice at NCAR. He was chairman of the Commercial Forums Committee for 25 plus years, and kept our forums are viewed as some of the best in the nation. He co-authored the commercial update every year that we take for the Real Estate Commission, as well as taught for 23 years throughout the state to commercial practitioners. From a CRCBR perspective, our organization could not have been formed without him. He served as our legal counsel for 26 plus years, as well as served on the State Rules Commission. He was also a CCIM and counsel for North Carolina CCIMs. So Garth really understood the business as well from a broker's perspective, as well as from a legal perspective. Some of the words that people have used to describe him were passionate, wise, respected for his friendship and leadership. And those of you that know him, he had a boisterous laugh and a very contagious smile when you walked into a room. So he will be missed. So thank you for the time. Keep his family and in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty and Teresa, both for putting that together. I have in my notes here that if anyone would like to make a comment about Garth in an upcoming Insight article, you can email your comments to Elia Ross, and her email address is aross, ROSS, at ncrealtors.org. Thank you guys both again for that. All right, so we'll move on to our programming. Nick Scarcy, our staff liaison, has obviously put a ton of work into this, as our amazing NC Realtor staff always does. And this is kind of a new thing that we're trying for the RCA group. So we've been asking RCA members about ways that we can provide more content and information related to commercial real estate. And today is one of those ideas. So this is our inaugural RCA track during the NC Realtors statewide meetings. We hope to continue these meetings moving forward to provide relevant and informative content. We also have included quarterly webinars based on commercial topics. If anyone has any ideas now for topics or speakers, you can feel free to suggest them. Otherwise, you can drop them in the chat or email our staff liaison, Nick Scarcy. So first up is Daniel Depke. So we'll hear from Daniel Depke from NAR, who's going to let us know about NAR's RCA Board Accreditation Program. Dan Depke is the Director of Member Policy at the National Association of Realtors. Before coming to the National Association of Realtors in January of 2020, he was the General Manager of a caregiving franchise. Prior to that, he spent nearly 15 years at the Appraisal Institute. He currently lives in the northern suburbs of Chicago with his wife and 2 young sons. Dan, I think you've got a slideshow you might be sharing with us.
Thank you. No slideshow today, but I just wanted to speak to you. Thank you, first of all, for having me, and thank you, Nick, for bringing me in. I really appreciate it. My name is Dan. I'm the Director of Member Policy and a member of the commercial team at NAR. I just want to take a brief moment today to talk about NAR's Commercial Services Accreditation Program. Now, some of you might be familiar already with it. Some of you might have an association that's already accredited through the program, but maybe for some of you, this is the first time hearing about it. What it is it was first introduced in 2008 by NAR, and it was created with the help of a lot of our commercial associations and structures, and it serves several purposes. One is just to recognize when our associations go above and beyond for their commercial members. Number 2 is to assist associations with PR and outreach to potential commercial members by functioning as an easy, recognizable visual symbol of your association's commitment to commercial services. Number 3 is a barometer for how well your association is currently serving your commercial membership, and kind of a roadmap of how you can improve commercial services going forward. And number 4, one of the major reasons we have it is, we often get phone calls from, our AEs who want to create a commercial structure within their organization, or are getting more commercial members and just kind of want to know how to make that membership count. And maybe they just don't know where to start. So the Commercial Services Accreditation Program that we offer serves as a comprehensive guide on where to start, first of all, and also where to go. So what it is, it's essentially a series of benchmarks that any association can meet. And this is really, local associations, commercial associations, state associations. All of these benchmarks are put together in a way where any association can meet these benchmarks in a variety of different ways. They represent key commercial services and member engagement activities, many of which are aligned with the core standards requirements, but kind of above and beyond. The benchmarks were derived from best practices at commercial overlay boards and commercial structures around the country, as services proven to increase commercial member engagement. So how it works is there are over 60 benchmarks. And if you get the 20 benchmarks that are required, the minimum required, you get 1 star. 2 stars is 30 of the benchmarks, 40 for 3 stars. At 50 benchmarks, you get a 4-star designation plus a trophy. And at 60, you get the 5-star highest designation which gets you the trophy, a mention at the annual meeting, as well as a $1,000 scholarship to use towards commercial services. So it really is kind of a nice program. And it's all broken into 7 categories. So I thought I'd list the 7 categories just to kind of give you an idea and give you an example of what might be in the categories to kind of see, you know, certain things are harder to come by, certain things are easier to come by, but it's something that even smaller boards can accommodate and it can be accredited as well. So number 1 is governance and structure. One of the examples there is at least one of your members of the board of directors is a commercial practitioner. You know, easy enough to me, right? Another one is there are commercial specific meetings or events for members, such as this one, to attend at least 4 times a year. The next one is communication. So is there a dedicated commercial services or resources webpage that exists within your association's website? Do you use social media regularly as an association to engage commercial members and the general community? The next one is education and professionalism. Do you offer commercial education programs at least 2 times a year? Do you offer educational programs about the basics of commercial real estate to residential agents who might be willing or wish to transition to learn more about that part of the industry? The next one is legislative and advocacy. Does your association have an active advocacy program for local and regional commercial real estate issues? Does your association have a commercial specific RPAC program in place? Technology and data is the next one. That's questions like, does your association host or promote a commercial CIE or MLS? Does your association provide commercial forms or access to a vendor that offers commercial forms? NAR state association involvement is the next one. Does a member of your association attend the NAR commercial committee meeting at mid-year or annual? Again, with us going virtual the past couple times, it's much easier to attend that one. A member of the association has been a part of a commercial related subcommittee, advisory board, or work group at the national level. With the last one being community member involvement and networking. Does your association offer a commercial education program to attract non-members? Is there a recognition program in place at your association with a specific award for a commercial member who is a realtor member of the association? So that's kind of just a breakdown of, you know, what you'll see. I put the link in the chat for, you know, anyone to click on and kind of see what it's all about. There's a big button where you can start as an association and just kind of look at the form. And, you know, you can start the form and see how well you do for your association and kind of also get ideas of maybe where to go next if there's something you see on there that you hadn't thought of. So it really is kind of a nice program, not only to recognize our associations that are doing a lot for their commercial members, but also just a way to kind of keep up and see what you could be doing, how you can be improving, see where you are compared to other associations. And one of the things that we're trying to do in the upcoming year is, you know, kind of modernize it, make improvements to it, not anything for any reason other than just upkeep on it and making sure that we're constantly providing, you know, and updating for all of the new things that are going on in the commercial sphere. Our big goal is for, you know, every association to at least apply, to at least go into the form to check it out and see where they're at. But one of the things that I want to kind of leave everyone with is, you know, this accreditation program, it's a process from the ground up, meaning that, you know, it's something that we've worked on with our commercial associations and our commercial committees at the national level. But this is a process that we really want all of our associations to feel comfortable with and for our commercial members to really have their hands in. So if you see this form and you're going through it and, you know, maybe something's missing, maybe you have a good idea that's not on the form, that's not part of the process, we'd love to hear from you. And I will put my email address into the chat for everyone for any good ideas. I'm really a big fan of our commercial committee at NAR. All friends of mine, all great friends to our commercial members in general, and really open to new ideas. That's really what, kind of we feel makes everything work from the ground up. So I appreciate your time today. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to take them. But again, I will leave my contact information for everyone in the chat.
So if anyone has any questions for Dan, please put those in the chat box now, and we will get those questions relayed to him. Dan, is there anyone that you recommend to fill out that application to see where an association stands? Like, is there a certain person who should be doing that?
No, it's really open to anyone. It can be an AE, it can be someone that you designate to do it. So really anyone who feels comfortable, if there's a certain person at your association that, kind of knows the ins and outs of what you do commercial wise, it can be a group effort as well. If there's one person that works on education, one person that works on advocacy, you could go through each part very quickly and, and work towards those stars. So it could absolutely be anyone that you designate.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions on the panel or from the chat room? All right, so I have a question here for you. Can you give us a list of the associations in North Carolina that are that presently have accreditation? And that came from Paul McGill.
That's a great question. Yeah, we do have a list. I don't have it handy at the moment, but we do have a list of all of the accredited associations. And let me see if I can get to that. Accredited associations. All right, I'll get the link in there so you can see which North Carolina associations are accredited at the moment, but we have them all listed on the website. Again, that's another thing that we like to do is recognize everyone on the NAR website with the number of stars that they've received. So I just put the link in there. You can check for any North Carolina associations.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Anyone else? All right, Dan. Well, thank you so much for that overview. That was insanely insightful, even for myself. I know that's something that I wouldn't mind see happening in Charlotte. So I appreciate you providing all this detailed information for this group.
Well, I thank you for having me. All right. Have a good morning, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to move on to our next introduction here, and I was told to shorten this by the panelist herself. We all know Katie Thomas. She is our North Carolina Realtors Chief Lobbyist, and she's going to update us on the North Carolina legislature. Katie?
Thank you so much, Jason. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone today. And for those of you that have already heard parts of this presentation a couple of times, I do apologize for repeating, but what do they say? Repetition is what keeps it in your head. So we'll plow forward. So I'm just going to share my screen real fast here because I do have a slideshow. And then, yikes. There we go. Sorry. Okay. So we started officially this legislative biennium on January 13th. They came in, they assigned committee chairs and committee assignments, and then they promptly adjourned until the 27th. They will come back this Wednesday and start their business. We'll start having bill filing immediately on that day, and committee work will start probably the next week. Bill filings will happen throughout March and April whenever we have our final filing deadlines. And then May 13th is the day by which any bill has to pass its body of origin in order to remain eligible through the 2022 legislative session. There are some exceptions to that, but by and large, May 13th is a big date. It is our crossover date, and we try to get as much done by that date as possible. When we will adjourn is anybody's guess. Some are very optimistic. I am not as optimistic because the North Carolina General Assembly has a huge lift this year. They will first start with coronavirus relief efforts based on the bill that came out from DC in December with a lot of money flowing down to the states. They also know there'll be another coronavirus relief package coming from the federal government that will appropriate a lot more money. And so they'll be waiting on that before they finalize their relief packages or their state budget. The Senate starts the state budget this year, and we expect to see their version sometime in April. We'll see the governor's budget in March, which everyone affectionately refers to as a doorstop. It doesn't matter if he's of the same party or a different party. The governor's budget carries zero weight in the General Assembly. It never has. So they will listen to it and have it presented to them and then kindly put it aside. And then the Senate will start with their budget, and we'll see that around April. The House will then take theirs. We'll see that sometime in June. And then there'll be a mad dash to try and get it negotiated between the House and Senate before the 1st of July. They also have to do redistricting this year, but because of the coronavirus, we will not have our numbers certified until late summer. So we're expecting them to adjourn their regular session, we hope, sometime in August, and then come back in September to do the redistricting session. However, I still consider that a pretty optimistic view, considering everything that has to be done. So there are other agenda items, though, for people like us. And so there'll be policy items that are happening throughout the legislative session. And here are just 3 of North Carolina's top, of the North Carolina Realtors' top legislative items. So we have a long list, including a lot of other things that have been on our agenda, sort of perennial issues, I call them, that deal with budget appropriations for things like the Workforce Housing Loan Program, the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina funding, and any incentives. So we advocate for those as well. Those are typically done through the budget process. But our top 3 sort of standalone budget, standalone items that aren't budget related are the remote online notarization. As you will recall, during the session last year, we were successful in getting the emergency video notarization authorized. What remote online notarization would do is it would be a more secure process that would be a permanent process in place to allow us to have online notarizations continuing to occur. Currently, our emergency provision is only effective until March 1. So we are working with a large stakeholder group on this, including the Secretary of State's office, but we are trying very hard to get things like transboundary notifications allowed so that closing deals will be a lot easier for folks, especially at a time when people don't want to travel as much. Another thing that is not as probably as pressing for this group, but housing relief funding for rental housing and mortgage relief funding, which we'll see in the next big package from DC, some funds for mortgage relief. Right now we have about $564 million to appropriate this session to folks who are having trouble paying their rent. And then of course, broadband expansion. This is sort of a perennial issue, supporting things like the GREAT program, the GREAT grant program through the state, and other items that other bills that may come up that really address the need for better broadband expansion throughout North Carolina. Oops, sorry, I should have popped through there. Other items that we will work on are things that people come to us with good ideas. So here are just 4 things. There are 2 or 3 that I really want to talk to you all about today. The first is the SALT workaround, and this would allow S Corps to take their state and local taxes off of as a deduction from their federal taxes. So we would be working with a large number of stakeholders, including the CPAs and retail merchants and other entities, to work on this issue, which does not affect the state coffers at all. And the US Treasury under the previous administration has said that they are not opposed to states going in and allowing through their own legislation states to allow for the deduction of state and local income, state and local taxes. The second bullet point is actually 2 issues. the North Carolina Restaurant and Lodging Association has come to us because they want to make 2 changes to commercial property taxes for this year and next year. The first one would be to pass legislation that retroactively allows property tax payments for all commercial properties for 2020 to be made through payment plans without penalties and interest. So I know that property taxes were due, I think, January 6th. However, this would go back, and for those that are having a hard time making those payments based on lost income would be able to take advantage of this and not have to pay interest or fees. Currently, counties can allow the payment plans, but they can't waive the fees or the interest on those payments. The second would be to allow for 2021 property taxes to be lowered for commercial properties up to a certain percent if the owner can show a loss of revenue due to the coronavirus for 2021. So all 3 of those issues I just discussed were approved by the legislative committee for us to support, unless there's any strong objection by this group, understanding that you all have a lot more at stake in the commercial property tax issues. Would love to hear opinions, comments on that. Anna, if you'll put my email in the chat box, it's just cthomas@ncrealtors.org. Please shoot me comments at any time. So let's get the next 2. So, and then we are always on the defense. So preventing taxes on real estate services is one of those perennial issues that we don't anticipate seeing this year. However, when we do have budget problems, we always know they're looking for additional revenue sources, so we stay vigilant. And then also, as you all know, DOT is making changes. The legislature is making changes to DOT funding structures, their sources, and their organizational structure. And so we continue to monitor this to ensure that the legislature and DOT are coming up with a way to maintain stability in their funding to keep projects going. But we also don't want them to come up with funding sources that negatively affect realtors or the real estate industry, such as mileage-based user fees or vehicle miles tax, the VMTs that they used to be called. And what else is out there, we don't know. We won't know until bills start being filed this week, but we will certainly keep you apprised of anything we think has legs and could be extremely detrimental to the commercial property sector. We're also constantly monitoring various regulatory changes throughout North Carolina. Right now, there are some real estate commission rules that are being discussed, and we have submitted comments on those. Residential rental insurance, as well as dwelling policies. So if many of you have apartment clients or apartments that you actually own, those rental insurance rate request has been 25% across the board. We're also looking at trying to encourage more private flood insurance purchases through a new program that has been approved by the Department of Insurance, and we're trying to show interest so that our insurance partners will start to carry it. And then we constantly are monitoring the court proceedings, meaning how courts are operating throughout North Carolina. We had a great conversation last week with the new administration for the Administrative Office of the Courts and the new Chief Justice. So we are keeping, just like we had great communications with the previous Chief Justice's office, keeping those lines of communication open so that we can show when there is need for a little more consistency around the state through magistrates and things of that nature. So with that, that is all I have for today. You can contact me at any time. And then Pam Melton is our new Director of Political and External Communications. And so her email is there as well. She will be doing a lot more of the regulatory work, but she has replaced Seth Palmer, who most of you probably remember. He left late last year, and Pam joined us, I think, in October. And we're excited for all of you to meet her. She's a great, great resource for all of you. So with that, I will turn it back over to if there are any questions, and if not.
I do see a question in the chat box for you, Katie. Are you monitoring anything with the sunsetting of HB2? Many local municipalities are beginning to discuss, and that comes from Teresa Salmon.
Yes, so thank you, Teresa. We are definitely monitoring these. Right now, Winston-Salem will be I think the 4th if they enact their ordinance, and we're monitoring sort of what they're doing and how the General Assembly is going to react, because we obviously don't want another House Bill 2 situation. So we're trying to have our local field staff, our local GADs work with these, as we hear about them, these local ordinances, and start to do some proactive work on these local ordinances, because if they are going to start these discussions, we would really like to have the provisions of our code of ethics inserted into any housing provisions, to make sure that if they are going to extend their discrimination policies, they make sure it's also in the housing realm. But we also are monitoring and trying to be good stewards of how we communicate with the General Assembly to see how they are going to react. And right now, the mood has been pretty docile on this, which is surprising, but I think also they are very well aware of how negative the last overreaction was. And I think we may see some lawsuits coming from this, challenging each individual ordinance, but not whole-scale enactment of a House Bill 2, Part 2. I think you will see some bills filed that look like a House Bill 2, Part 2, but I don't, because you always have people, they can file any bill they want to. There's no the only limit is the number of bills House members can actually introduce themselves, but there's no other limit on what can be filed. And so we may see some of those bills, but I don't think we will see such an overreaction like we did previously.
Great. Any other questions for Katie before we let her go? All right. Thank you so much, Katie. I really, really appreciate your update.
Okay, thank you all. And if I could just for 1 second say a quick word about Garth. In listening to his funeral on Saturday, he was mentioned as a teacher, a mentor, and very humble. And he was all of those things. And he was extremely helpful to me throughout my career and working on issues for you all. And so he definitely will leave a huge hole. And I thank you for the memorial. It was beautiful.
Thank you, Katie. All right, update on our bylaws. So my understanding is staff is currently reviewing and considering ways that we can update our bylaws, and they have not been updated for quite some time now. So they're going to put together some suggestions and edits, and we'll have that to review by our legislative meetings. Moving on, I get to introduce our amazing fearless leader and CEO of NC Realtors, Andrea Bushnell. She has an update and an announcement for us about the National Association of Realtors C5 program.
Great, thank you, Jason. So C5, what's C5? Well, it all started with the MIPIM program. Most of you have probably heard about MIPIM. MIPIM is a program that we have been participating in for several years. It is the largest international property event in the world, and it's held annually except for last year, and we're keeping our fingers crossed for 2021. However, it really is where the money goes. So if you are a city or a community or a country even, you will go to MIPIM to present your programs, your ideas, your opportunities for investment. And that's really where we come in. We have always gone, not because we had a deal necessarily to sell, but rather to make sure that North Carolina is on the radar of anyone who is looking for investing their money in real estate in the United States. And so we participate in the USA Pavilion along with several other states for that exact purpose. And so it's been an interesting and eye-opening experience, I will tell you. It is just the dollar volume that is represented there of groups and investors, and the amount of money that they actually have to sell is incredible. The most interesting thing is that the last time we went, most of the investor dollars were seeking what they considered secondary markets. In other words, all of the gateway cities like New York, San Francisco, Seattle, Miami, Chicago are starting to get so overdeveloped and so overpriced that most of the investment dollars were seeking a secondary place to put their money. And so they were very interested in the southeastern part of the United States, including, and maybe most importantly, North Carolina, because we were there. And so we do think that it is a program that is worth continuing. But at the same time, Charlie Oppler, who is the president of the National Association, has long had the idea that while we participate and have a USA pavilion at MIPIM and that it is an important thing to do, that really we should be having our own property show, if you will, in the United States. And so it is his vision this year to hold what he has called the C5 Summit. And it will be the premier US-based commercial real estate event launching in the fall of 2021. And it will be held in the heart of the commercial real estate industry, at least from his perspective, and that is in New York City. It will be at the Marriott Marquis. So it'll be 3 days of networking, learning, deal making on September 27th through the 29th of 2021. So, you know, who should attend and exhibit? They're looking at commercial industry influencers and industry partners, including commercial brokers, state and local real estate associations, economic development organizations, government officials, NAR global members, along with domestic and international investors. So this is actually going to be quite a large event for a first-time inaugural event, and we will be looking to participate in the C5 Summit as well. However, I think the importance for this group is to take it back to your own commercial organizations and commercial peers to see if we want to have an even larger presence for North Carolina at this event. So the real question is, and I can't make any promises, is that if you have a project that you're wanting to sell, you know, who are the investors who are going to be there? Are they domestic? Are they are they international? We just don't know yet, and so I can't make any promises. But I would never bet against Charlie Oppler to get people in the building. So the schedule is quite interesting because there is a lot of deal making opportunity built into this schedule. There are certainly opening sessions. There's certainly breakout sessions. There's a deal room that's going to be open. There's going to be receptions where you can meet and greet. But that goes on for all of Monday, all of Tuesday, and until noon on Wednesday. So stay tuned for more information. As soon as we get more information, we will certainly be getting it out to all of you. I am lucky enough to be sitting on the advisory council for this. And so I do get first view of information that's coming forward, and I will be pushing it out to this group because I think the C5 Summit is really aimed at all of you. So as we move forward, I'll send more information, but if you have any questions in the meantime, please reach out to me. And if I can't answer the question, I will certainly get the answer from NAR and from the people who are working on it there. So that's what C5 is. Back to you,
Andrea. Does anyone have any questions for Andrea about C5? I think she covered all the details about it, but just want to make sure there's no questions. Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrea.
You're welcome.
Next up on our agenda is Member Property Spotlight. And I need some help from our staff folks on this one to understand, but this is an opportunity for you guys to pitch your properties to the group. So I just need to understand how we need to notify them to do that? Is there in the chat box? Is it a raise your hand kind of thing to open up so they can speak?
So Jason, if they would like to speak, they can put it in the chat and then I can give them permission to speak from the attendee side if we want to do it that way, or we can keep it all in chat if that's easier.
All right, so I would say we'll look for both. So if you have a property that you'd like to pitch for us, or for the group rather, just raise your hand, and that's located down at the bottom of your screen, or you can put it into the chat box that you would like to be recognized by Anna.
So since they are attendees, they don't have the raise hand function. So I'm just going to ask them, and I'll put this in the chat just to virtually raise the hand or otherwise notify us in the chat, and we can recognize them for there if that works for the committee.
That works great. Thank you, Anna. I'll give you guys a few minutes. Somebody's got to have a funny property out there to talk about.
Hey, Jason, this is Andrea.
Absolutely.
Does anybody have any updates on some of the mega properties, any development that's going on, or any promising development that may be going on some of these 3 or 4 major projects that we have going? I know there's a couple south of Greensboro, but there's one over by Fayetteville. I think there's a 4th one. Does anybody have any information about that? I would love to know what's going on.
All right, I'm not seeing anything pop up. We'll definitely give it another minute or 2 here, but certainly this is an opportunity we'll always provide these in the meetings going forward where you guys can talk about anything exciting that you've got coming up. But certainly if anyone has specific to Andrea's request, please let us know that in the chat box. And we will keep this on the agenda for future meetings. I do see from Sheila Knight, she says, Andrea, she'll get some updates on the mega sites that she thinks you're referring to. So it looks like she'll have some updates for you.
Great, thank you.
All right. Moving on, next item on our agenda is any announcements from the floor. So if anyone has any announcements that they would like to make, now is the time to do so. Got a quiet group this morning. All right, not seeing any. This will give us about a 30-minute break. It looks like we're due back here at 10:15, and that will start our second session for the day. So not hearing anything else from anyone, I'm going to let the group go, and I'll see you back here at 10:15. Thanks, everybody. Welcome back, everybody. Give it just another minute here or so. Gay, I think you're ready and set up on your side, so we'll start here in just a moment at 10:15.
Thanks, Jason.
All right, I see 10:15 on my side, so thanks and welcome back, everybody. We are thrilled to have one of National Association of Realtors' top experts, Gay Corriton, joining us today to talk about how things are looking for 2021 in the commercial realm. Gay is Senior Economist and the Director of Housing and Commercial Research at the Research Group of the National Association of Realtors. And that is, of course, our trade association. She manages the production of National Association of Realtors housing statistics on existing home sales, prices, affordability, and inventory, conducts National Association of Realtors residential, commercial, and international market research and surveys, and analyzes economic, demographic, and local conditions that affect home ownership and the outlook for residential and commercial property markets. Gay has a Master's of Science in Statistical Science from George Mason University and a Master of Arts and Bachelor of Science in Economics from the University of the Philippines, and is a certified business economist designation from the National Association for Business Economics. The floor is yours, Gay. We look forward to hearing what you have to tell us today.
Thank you, Jason, and hello to everyone, all the members of the North Carolina Commercial Alliance. Happy to be here with you all. I work with the Raleigh Association also, so I'm just glad to be always involved with the North Carolina members. So with that, let me share my screen. And I hope you can see it. Thumbs up, Jason. Okay, so let me start. Okay, awesome. So, well, let's start with what's happening to the economy. The economy sets the stage for what happens in commercial real estate. And as you can see there, let me just also move my screen there a bit to the side so I can see the chart. There it is. So, economy is on a recovery mode. We had a short technical recession, Q2 and Q3, but the economy came back. Of course, it's not a full recovery yet. The pandemic continues to affect businesses, particularly the retail trade, the hotel industry, and those are the sectors that are, pulling back the full recovery from taking place. But it's a good performance, and it's in the right direction. So we've seen growth, economy is growing, but it's been an uneven recovery. Not all sectors are growing. As you can see there, clearly the leisure and the hospitality sector and the retail trade are taking the heaviest beating. So we lost about 8.3 million jobs compared to February in leisure and hospitality. The economy has recovered half of those, 4.4 million. So, so still about half to be recovered. Retail trade also, retail trade has been doing a bit well. We lost 2.3 million. We've recovered about 2 million jobs. So about just 300,000 jobs to be recovered. In professional and business services, which are your office using industries. So, this would include, the white collar jobs, people who are in tech, people who do management. 2.3 million jobs were lost there. Let me use my cursor. You got that red bar chart there. And we've gained about 1.4. So still also about a million, I think a million more to go. Until we recover all of these jobs, that will put a drag on the demand for office space. So financial activities is also down. So that puts a drag on the demand for office space, for retail space, and but as I said, everything hinges on what's going to happen to economy, and of course, everything hinges on what's going to happen to when we beat COVID-19, right? So President Biden has a plan for that, and he says it'll be 100 million vaccinated in 100 days. And I read that it takes about 70% of the population to be vaccinated with a 95% effectivity rate of the vaccine for the US to achieve what you call your herd immunity. So, if you do 100 million in 3 months and another 100 million, what's the population of the US? About 300 million, right? So 70%, that's about 200 to 250 million. If that happens, then we achieve herd immunity in 2021. Of course, there's a lot of talk, is that achievable? But I don't want to go into that. I mean, I'm not the health expert, but, from what I've heard, they're really pushing for that. And that is the core policy right now of the Biden administration. So, we'll see growth in many of these industries, particularly leisure and hospitality, retail trade, that are halting economic growth, causing unemployment. So, the bulk of jobs in December, so you might have, read that jobs are growing and then they fell in December, 140,000. So the headline numbers look disheartening, but most of the industries really posted growth. What really pulled that, what really caused the decline in jobs was your leisure and hospitality jobs. And in the leisure and hospitality, it was food services and drinking places. And it's not a surprise, we all, there's still a lot of restaurants that can't open, or they started opening, but with the resurgence of COVID, they couldn't open fully. They're just open like what, 50% or less. So that has really impacted your food services and drinking places. On the other hand, your electronic shopping sales are accelerating. So again, this is hurting your brick and mortar business. You can see there that general merchandise stores in March 2020, the level of the retail sales were about the same for both general merchandise stores and electronic shopping. So your general merchandise stores here would include your department stores. It would also include your discount warehouses like Walmart and the Costco's. But when COVID hit, that sales just plummeted there, whereas you saw a resurgence, you saw an acceleration of electronic shopping. So, this is just a trend that has happened. It might continue to accelerate, as people got used to it, I guess, and particularly, if you don't really have to try out anything physically, you may want to purchase it online, or you can always return stuff, right? You can always return what you bought, whether it's a dress or a pair of boots. But the brick and mortars are trying to also to reinvent themselves. So, for example, Target, it's not necessarily just now going into sales, sort of also becoming like kind of like a distribution center, right? Or they're reinventing themselves because you buy something online. They're also offering now online, and then you go there, pick up something at the store. So, I don't think we'll see, the retail brick and mortars really go away. And in fact, an NAR survey just showed that we had an increase in our freestanding retail stores. So maybe a bit of the department store sales the department store sales will continue to hurt, but it's your freestanding stores that are trying to also reinvent themselves. Impact of the pandemic on small businesses. So 75% has had 75% of small businesses reported that the pandemic had a negative impact. And so 74% have received a PP loan. But what's surprising to me, and I think, well, not surprised, but what's interesting is that because they have received a PPP loan, you don't see the same magnitude of closures, right? 1.8 of only 1.8 of businesses have closed. Now I say only because it's relative to this big number here, but we don't want, of course, any business closing. Any business closing would mean loss of jobs, and so that is why there is now a second PPP loan to prevent these job closures and permanent closures. But as I said, right now, because of the PPP support, less than 2% of businesses have closed. Now the Census Business Survey, sorry, that's not the Household Pulse Survey, that's a business survey, show that it'll take a long time also, more than 6 months for businesses to resume normal operations. So 46.4 said it'll take 6 months, while 7.1% of the small businesses said they will never return to normal operations. So we're really looking here, if you say that 2021 will still not be fully normal as we are still, distributing the vaccine and then watching or monitoring if we won't have any resurgence, if we do achieve that herd immunity. And even then, I don't think people will be advised to completely take off their masks, right? So we'll still continue to practice those social distancing. So 2022 is when we will likely see, these businesses really resuming their normal operations. On the multifamily side, another survey of the census said that nearly 20% of renters are not caught up on payment. So nationally, that's the figure. And I also looked at North Carolina. So it's the same, 19% of the population is currently not caught up on payment. And nationally, we have about 44 million renters. But there's a survey by the National Multifamily Housing Council that says that, 94% of the rent is being collected. So even if they're not caught up on their payment, they are making some form of payment. They're not just fully making it. So according to the National Multifamily Housing Council, 94% of the rent was collected. And so I was just making some back of the envelope calculations. If you have like 44 million renter households, and 19% of those were not paying their, it's 44 million renter households. The median rent is about $1,200 a month. And then 94% of that is not being collected. So you have about, 25 billion in back rent, about 25 to 30 billion in back rent for the past 10 months that has not been paid. And that landlords are, of course, assuming right now. And so again, the 25 billion support in the COVID-19 fiscal stimulus, the latest fiscal stimulus that was passed in December, is really going to be a big help to renters and also landlords. Teleworking or working from home, that's the biggest factor that is influencing the office sector. So in May, around about a third of the workforce was working from home. That has went down to 21%, but lately there's been a pickup again. And this is a survey by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So there was a decrease and it's picking up. But the decrease is really here, your other types of workers who are coming back to work, like health workers or education workers. But if you look at the this type in the industries that are what we call our office using industries, right? Like computer and mathematical, nearly a third of them continue to work from home, or half of them architecture and engineering, office and administrative support is 25%. But, still a lot of the workforce is working from home. With COVID, still affecting businesses and sales. Of course, businesses will try as much as possible also to not expand. So that is really what is causing the steep decline in absorption of office space. And I'll show later that I think about 94 million square feet of office space was lost in 2020. So that's the backdrop. I wanted to show you, just the big picture. So, big picture of what's happening, and those factors will be the ones that will impact what's happening in commercial real estate. So I said the jobs are recovering, and so we've seen, in the fourth quarter that we saw a pickup in commercial sales transactions, and this is data from Real Capital Analytics. So commercial transactions are usually about 100 to 150 billion a month. So those plummeted to just about a third in the second quarter. Then they started picking up in the third quarter, rose more in the fourth quarter. So, things are, transactions are picking up, but although on the whole, when we look at the full year, sales are still down by about 30%. Almost all sectors are down by 30-40% for the office. Surprisingly, retail is up. So there may have been some acquisitions for the retail sector, but that was surprisingly up. And maybe those are going to be repurposed. NAR did a study, and most of vacant retail malls are repurposed either for mixed use or also as for other uses like health-related uses and even churches. So there was some interest in acquiring those retail malls in 2021. But the story here that I wanted to highlight is, transactions are picking up. And you can also see here that the investor perception of risk has been declining, and that will be your cap rate less your 10-year note, right? So that means that prices are starting to rise already. We saw a declining cap rates here relative to the 10-year T-note in 2020 Q4. Now they're still a bit elevated compared to 2019, but the trend is, in the right direction, meaning that, things are improving. Now, what do we see about the dollar sales volume by metro area? So most metro areas suffered deep declines, but here Raleigh just suffered a decline of 1% in commercial sales volume in 2020 compared to 2019. So that's very good news for Raleigh. Charlotte, 25% decline. So more in line with the declines in the other market. Of course, the biggest would be Manhattan. They saw a 50% drop in their sales volume. And then also Austin, another 50% drop. San Francisco, Chicago. So these major gateway cities are seeing big drops in their sales decline. So a 1% decline in Raleigh is good. 23% decline in Charlotte is also relatively good compared to what's happening in these other metro areas. So NAR conducts a study of its commercial members. I'm sure some of you may have received it, and if you do receive it, please answer it. We send that survey quarterly, and so we ask what is happening to your transactions. And what is coming up is that it's land and it's industrial that are the bright sectors. So on average, the respondents said that they're seeing a 3% increase in land sales compared to a year ago. They're seeing a 1% increase in sales volume for industrial, and then the rest, they're seeing a decline. So again, you see here the trend, it's hospitality, retail, and then the office that are being impacted more deeply compared to your apartment sector here. And again, as I said, the industrial, which is doing really well because of the acceleration of e-commerce. And pertaining to land, the demand for land is strong in residential developed land. So we know that there's an increase in demand for homes, with low mortgage rates. And so, but there's not, so that would mean that there's going to be also a demand for land, right? So where you're going to build those homes, so that's why you've seen a very strong increase here for developed land, and also demand for ranches and recreation are also increasing. And I think this will probably be associated with demand for land also outside urban areas. People just, I guess, thinking that, hey, I don't know what's going to happen later on. Sure, we'll have a vaccine for COVID, but I don't know, is there going to be a different strain? But there was just an increase in demand for recreation land and also for ranches. Industrial land continues also to grow. And then, well, here you saw a pickup also in the retail and hotel developed land. So anyway, our members who are engaged in land sales are showing that they're doing better compared to our members who are involved in the sales of commercial structures. Well, and then what about apartment sales? So I've said a while ago that overall commercial real estate sales picked up. So we're seeing that pick up in sales transactions of apartments of 2.5 million or over. So we've seen around 30 billion a month in sales transactions, sales deals for apartments. Ooh, that plummeted to just about 10 billion, but that started going up, and now we're about 20 billion for mid-rises, and for low rises about 40 billion. And I'm showing this chart because there's a talk, right? Or there's interest in knowing, are people moving out of mid-rises or high rises? Do they want these low rises, which are more in the rural areas? Seems to be that both mid-rises and low rises are recovering. Guess we need to find out more exactly why. I mean, even if you have a lot more people in mid-rises and high rises, this could be more well-maintained, so they have the big and mid-high rises are owned by the large investors. And so they probably are investing more and they have the financial capability to, invest more in, health, sanitation, changing their filtration systems. And I guess if you look at an apartment and you feel safe, you look at it, it's clean, it's safe, it doesn't mean that if it's mid-rise or high-rise, you don't want to rent or live there, right? So anyway, we're seeing a pickup in both, as I said, mid-rises and high-rises. Now, again, there's also the question of, are people moving out to the suburbs? Are they moving away from the city? And we do see that there's a decrease in the share of the 6 major markets to total acquisitions. But that's something that has happened even before the COVID. And when I say the 6 major markets, I'm talking of New York City, Chicago, Boston, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and San Francisco. So that share has declined since the housing market recovery. And that would be attributed to the steep prices in the 6 major markets. So people are looking for more affordable places, but the pandemic seems to have accelerated that declining share of the 6 major markets, which means that your secondary and your tertiary markets, right? Like, Raleigh, North Carolina, Durham, Charlotte, those markets will be picking up. So what's the impact of, COVID-19 on apartment rents? Prices are always indicator of demand. And as you can see here, the steep declines in apartment rents have happened in your northeast areas like New York City, even the DC area. So these are your blue colored areas here. But if you look in the North Carolina areas, and you see here on the bottom corner here, Raleigh, you still see positive rent growth, right? So only actually Durham, Chapel Hill saw a rent growth, and you guys are more familiar. Maybe it could be related to the universities around that area, less demand for apartments. But in general, all the metro areas in North Carolina are showing positive rent growth. So there's still strong demand, and it's because they're affordable. Apartments in North Carolina are affordable compared to, say, look at these apartments in the West Coast, like $2,000, right? So, and if people can work from home, well, we don't know yet. The issue is, can people work from home full time? Guess if you can work from home full time, you can work anywhere, right? So you could relocate from San Francisco to, Raleigh or Charlotte, and, do your work from there. Of course, if you're just working hybrid, the chances for moving will not be as great. So you'll continue to, say, if your job is in San Francisco, San Jose, you'll continue, of course, to work there. So we'll have to see whether a lot of businesses will be shifting towards allowing more employees to work full time, or just, they'll be going hybrid. But as I said before, so right now, about 24% of the population of the workforce is working from home. So we'll have to see that mix of hybrid versus people who are working full-time from home. Office transactions also rising, but still they're way below what they were pre-pandemic. And again, this is all related to fraction of people working from home, and businesses still are having a difficult time because of the social distancing measures that are still in place. Again, there's a question of, is there a movement towards the suburbs? Are offices moving away from the core urban cities? Well, even before the pandemic, the share of suburban offices has always been rising. And again, that could also be due to the price, right? Look at that difference, about twice, right? So suburban markets cost a lot, just half of the CBD markets. So there's always been that uptrend, but COVID-19 just seems to have accelerated that. Now, the office space, we've seen 98 million square feet of lost occupancy. That's much more than what we had during the Great Recession of 81 million square feet that was lost. But interestingly, the vacancy rate has not increased as much. I mean, it has ticked up, it has gone up about 12.5%, about 14, nearly 15%, but it's not as high as it was during the Great Recession. And so that just means that the office market is not starting off from the pandemic on very high, vacancy rates. Yeah, as you can see, right, in 2005, the office vacancy rates were starting off at a much higher rate compared to the vacancy rates prior to the pandemic. Here I'll show you the areas where there was a large loss of office space, and on the red, let me start on the red. So Raleigh, Durham, just one of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, just one of 9 areas. And this is New York, Brooklyn, just one of 9 areas that experienced an increase in office occupancy in 2020. But most offices, they were experiencing a decline. San Francisco, 9 million, right? Or about 10% of the 94 million of office space that was lost. San Francisco, 9 million, New York, Midtown, 9 million. Again, Boston, Houston, New York, downtown San Jose, Chicago, all the big cities are showing declines, but it's the tertiary and the secondary cities that are showing a positive net absorption in office space. Now let's go over to the industrial market. Again, a pickup in industrial sales deals in the fourth quarter. Now the industrial market has now been dominated. It's being dominated by warehouses. Prior to 2010, they were just about the same, right? You've always had more transactions for warehouses, but since 2012, you've just seen an acceleration in sales deals for warehouses, whereas for flex offices, not as much. And again, I keep repeating, this is all, of course, related to the rising trend for e-commerce sales. So there's also, now in contrast to the office space, which lost 97 million square feet, the industrial office space rose by 268 million square feet. So if you think about it, the commercial market is on a net gain in space, right? Plus 268 million for industrial, which is offsetting the loss in the office space. So the action right now is really in the industrial market, and vacancy rates in the industrial space are just a low 5%, and they've gone down from 10% since 2008. Where are the areas with the largest net absorption of office space? It's Atlanta, 26 million, Dallas, Fort Worth, Pennsylvania, right? Almost a lot of metro areas are showing positive net absorption. And here I have data from Cushman and Wakefield that shows that North Carolina had 2.3 million in new new industrial space that was occupied in 2020, and Raleigh-Durham about 1 million. So yeah, so industrial is where all of the demand is right now. Now, what about vacant malls? I showed earlier, vacant malls are having a difficult time, the brick and mortars, but vacant malls are being reused. So we saw that pick up in sales in 2020, in sales deals in 2020. And how are they being reused? Well, a survey of our realtors, and some of you may again have responded to this, said that the vacant malls, 37% of you said that you're seeing that vacant malls are being repurposed as mixed use, combination of retail, residential, office, and then industrial use. So 25% of you said they're being also repurposed for industrial use, 17% for storage, and 1 in 5 said that for churches, medical, some said office space, colleges, universities, or even a government building or a health armory. So, with the acceleration of the distribution of the COVID-19 vaccine, we might see some of those vacant malls also being used, right, as distribution centers. So there's a lot of potential for vacant malls, not as a mall anymore, but as another type of property. Now, there might have to be some rezoning. That will have to be, of course, taken. That will have to be discussed with your with the state and local, with the local associations. And we did a study on repurposing vacant malls, and most of them, they really needed private financial backing. They also needed state or federal backing in terms of, in terms of the tax breaks. And states and local agencies, local governments were happy to provide that, because you also don't want to see a vacant mall in your neighborhood that's just causing a blight. That's giving you lost taxes. And so they were willing to work with private sectors in repurposing those malls. And you can go to our website and see, or just Google case studies on repurposing vacant malls, and that report will come up. What has been the impact of COVID-19 on commercial real estate? And so this is the percent of respondents who said they are seeing more of these cases, right? Again, this is a survey of our realtors. What changes are you seeing in the following areas compared to January 2020, which was a pre-coronavirus period? 85% are saying they're still seeing alternating staggered work schedules. More than half, or 69%, are seeing that companies are leasing or moving into offices with smaller square footage. So it seems that the smaller office is more in demand right now than the large office spaces. Again, this is now, right, with COVID still around. There are also short-term leases, right? So 63% are saying that you have short-term leases of 2 years or less. So again, all these answers are dependent on current conditions now. So of course, we do know that long-term leases are less expensive than short-term leases. And so once there's greater clarity on what really is going to be the impact of the vaccine, we're going to achieve herd immunity. So the economics will fall into place, right? If long-term leases are less expensive, then hey, why not go for a long-term lease, right? You don't want a more expensive short-term lease. But right now, given the current state of the economy and the health conditions and the effect of the pandemic, this is what our members are saying. So what is the forecast? Well, as I said, everything hinges on the economy, and we are NAR, and not just NAR, but a group of economists that convened together in December last year and gave their forecast, said that, they're seeing growth in 2021. The economy is going to continue to grow as well in 2022. They're hopeful. The unemployment rate, there's the unemployment rate continuing to decline. And this is all because of the expansionary fiscal and monetary stimulus, right? So the Fed is not, in 2020, they don't expect the Fed to raise interest rates yet. It's going to remain at around zero. That increase in federal funds rate is expected to come only in 2022. So we'll continue to have a low interest rate environment. And at the same time, President Biden is pushing for fiscal expansionary or more spending, to address and already kill the virus, right? We want to kill that. We want to end that. And so, because if we don't end that, we'll see retail businesses shutting down. We see hotel businesses not being able to operate. It's just really a severe drag on the economy. So really addressing and containing the virus is the #1 priority. And that really should be the case. So are we supposed to get worried about the fiscal deficit? Yes, it's rising, but between containing the virus, stimulating the economy now, helping people who are not yet able to pay their rents, those are more important right now than keeping the fiscal deficit in check. So of course, down the line, we'll have that. Now, in terms of, you might have, I think you'd had speakers on policy advocacy. Of course, there's talk that President Biden may look at slashing this 1031 exchanges. Now, NAR has a strong advocacy position on that. And we also did a survey. So this is not a loophole. There's one thing that, you can advocate. 1031 is not a loophole. It's just a tax deferral. Members are saying that, they're using the money to invest it in something else. It's not like you sold it and you hide the money under your bed, right? You're just using the money to fund something else. And then it's going into, it's going for more investment. So most of those who do 1031 will invest more, add more money into the new investment. And so it's not a loophole, it spurs investment activity, and this is what is in fact needed to keep the economy going. So with improvement in economy, the expectation is for vacancy rates to fall. Of course, they won't fall right away, because of the massive loss of office occupancy, and also the construction that's already in the pipeline. We'll see gradual declines. And this is what happened also during the Great Recession, right? Office vacancy rates did not decline quickly, even if the economy recovered. But in general, we're seeing a decline in office vacancy rates, some slight, and I'm saying that there's a slight uptick in industrial vacancy, not that the industrial market is going to see less demand. It's just because, you're going to see more investments. You're going to see more coming into the pipeline for industrial space. And also for retail, retail are going to be see a little bit of an uptick there. But not a big uptick in retail vacancy rates. There's not a lot of investment going in retail vacancy. Again, if at all, is going to be a repurposing. And then for multifamily, we're going to see a tight. I guess I'm anticipating a steeper decline in vacancy rates, just because of the low mortgage rates, and that means that housing construction will have to be split between single family homes for home ownership and then your multifamily homes that are typically for rent. And so home builders are right now, construction is 1.6 million, and they're also allocating resources. And with the demand for homes, given the low mortgage rates, you won't see as much uptick in your multifamily. So that's why I'm looking here at tighter vacancy rates for 2022. So with that, thank you so much, and I'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Gay. We will look for some questions in the chat box from the membership. In the meantime, I did want to point out Michael Barr put in the chat box for the CCIM chapter that they will be holding their 2021 virtual commercial real estate forecast on February 18th at 11:30 a.m. And Casey Conway, former Atlanta Federal Reserve Board member and CCIM chief economist, he will be doing an overview of the NC CRE and deep dive into the Charlotte Triad and Triangle markets. And he said you can go to the nccim.org website to register, and tickets are $25. And we will keep looking here for just a few minutes for messages. I'm sorry, for questions. Does anyone have any questions for Gay? All right, well, timing wise, this wraps us up perfectly on schedule. We will reconvene at 11:15. Gay, we want to thank you so much for spending time with our group and all these amazing insights and what we have to look forward to, honestly. So hopefully things will be headed back in the right direction here soon. But thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. Thanks, Andrea and Mark and Nick and Jason. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much.
Nick.
We'll be back about 15 minutes, everybody, 11:15.
But a real estate commission complaint would be a different matter. You know, the real estate commission expects agents, if they're going to represent the size of a of a facility, to exercise reasonable diligence in measuring it if they're going to make a representation about size. And clearly, this agent never measured it and missed it by, you know, 150% or 100%. That might not fly with the real estate commission. So I would say that an agent who did that may be looking at possible disciplinary action by the commission. And sometimes, you know, those involved, resolving those involve, excuse me, you know, the payment of some money to make things right. You know, the real estate commission is not, legally speaking, in a position to award, you know, money damages or require a respondent in a complaint to pay money damages. But practically speaking, that's the way a lot of real estate commission complaints do get resolved. So, you know, the agent who did this may end up coming out of pocket to resolve a real estate commission complaint. And that could go for the buyer agent as well. You know, the buyer agent can't just blindly rely on representations a listing agent makes. And we see these cases. One of my partners does a ton of real estate commission complaints. And we see these cases sometimes boomeranging back to the buyer agent who himself or herself could have done a better job, you know, investigating the property, you know, with their buyer. So that's my answer to that question. I don't know if Jason, if you know, if people want to, you know, if people have questions while we're on a topic, if they want to pose them, that's fine with me. I don't mind handling them as we go along, but if I don't hear anything, I'll just move on to the next question.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm monitoring the chat. So if anyone does have questions, please post those in the chat box and I will keep an eye out for them. We'll know when they come along. Thanks, Will. Okay. Next one. This is a very common source of questions on the hotline and an increasing source of questions. It says, it's not phrased in the form of a question. It says heirs to estates and how properties get divvied up. So, you know, what are the laws regarding if you want to list and sell the property of a recently deceased owner? As I said, this comes up a lot and seems to be coming up more and more. I've attributed it to the fact that maybe we're starting to see the leading edge of the baby booms dying off, and that there are just more people, that brokers are handling more properties that involve owners who have recently died, because there's just no question that we're getting this question more often. I think of this more in a residential context, maybe because we talk primarily to residential brokers on the hotline. There's certainly nothing inherently residential about this, but I would assume in commercial, you're more commonly going to be dealing with properties that are owned by an entity rather than individuals. And since the entity is going to survive the death of the owner, the shareholder or member of an LLC, then you're probably not running into the same issue. Although I got to say, when I was thinking about my comments here, I could see issues with, you know, how do you handle a situation where you've got a one owner LLC and that person dies? You know, I think there are probably a lot of analogies to what I'm getting ready to say here. The way I want to tee this question up is I actually had this question on the hotline on Friday. And the question was, they come in different variations, but the question I got on Friday, I'm just going to read it to you. If the executor signs the listing agreement and the heirs just sign the deed at closing, is this okay? Do all heirs of the estate sign the additional signature page to go with the listing agreement? Thank you. And before I
I'll give you the answer that I gave to the question, but before I give the answer, I just want to share with you a few general principles that you should keep in mind. And I'll say that this comes up enough. I got a lawyer I know I work with on the Joint Tort Forms Task Force, a guy named Rick Poe from Charlotte, who was kind enough to write an article on this subject that I've sent to many people. And I think I sent it to Nick, and I thought maybe you could display it just so you can sort of see it. You can, this would be available on our website in the archived Q&As there are several hundred on our website addressing a wide variety of topics. And this one's up there too. The website's not great for searching. It's kind of frustrating to find things. This was actually an article in Insight magazine, and so there's a section in the archives for Insight articles, but all the things I'm going to say are also contained in this article. So you might just get your hands on a copy of that article, and then you can apply the principles in the article the next time you run into a situation where you're handling property of a recently deceased owner. Yeah, there it is. Good picture of Rick Poe. Yeah, so anyway, that's about a 2-page article I would just commend to you for future use. The general principles: upon the death of a property owner, title to the property vests immediately in the devisee's will, in the decedent's will, if he or she had a will, or in their heirs at law, if they didn't have a will. Those heirs are determined by the laws of intestate succession. So sometimes you hear that someone who dies without a will is referred to as dying intestate. That's what they mean. The disposition of their estate is going to be governed by basically a will that the General Assembly makes for you. If you're improvident enough not to have a will when you die, the General Assembly decides who's going to inherit your estate. And basically under the laws of intestacy, which can get very complicated. And I've got to say, I'm not a probate lawyer. Should have said that at the outset. If the decedent is survived by a spouse and children, the spouse would receive part of the property and the children would receive the rest. If they're not survived by a spouse, but by children, the children would own the property. And if the decedent isn't survived by a spouse or children, things can get complicated pretty quickly. The general scheme is you go down to kids. If you don't find any there, then you go up to ancestors. So if their parents still living, they would actually inherit. And if the parents are gone, then you go out to what they call collateral kin. And that would include siblings and even cousins. Those are the cousins we sometimes refer to as laughing heirs, because they had no idea, that they were going to get anything. And this is how it happened. Their aunt died with no surviving children, no surviving spouse, and then somehow they end up with the estate or a part of the estate. So anyway, that first big principle is that the heirs or devisees, if there's a will, inherit the property immediately upon the last breath of the guy that just died. So there's never a break in season or a break in ownership. So they become the owners of the property immediately upon the death of the person who just died. So, that should make it really simple, right? Well, the problem is that you've got to administer the estate in order to, and I've just realized I'm running out of power here and I'm going to have to switch computers. Oh, wait a minute. No, I've got a power source. Hang on just a second. I apologize.
No problem. Well, we'll give them just a minute to plug in.
Okay, sorry about that. I think I'm
Whenever
good.
you're ready, Will, I do have a question in the chat box for you. So just let me know when you're ready to take that one.
Okay. So you got to administer the estate so that you can cut off claims to creditors. And so, that's sometimes referred to as the probate process. And if there was a will, the person who administers the estate is typically named in the will, and they're called an executor. If there wasn't a will, the person who administers the estate is called the administrator. And the term personal representative, or PR, is the generic term that refers to both an executor and an administrator. So, the benefit of administering the estate is it cuts off later claims by creditors who could otherwise get a lien on the property. But the estate doesn't have to be completely wrapped up in order to list and sell the property. You can sell property out of an open estate, but in that case, before the property can be transferred, the law requires at least one publication of a notice to creditors in a local newspaper. And so if you're selling property out of an, well, get ahead of myself here, it's possible, kind of backing up, you can have a will that devises the property to the executor with specific instructions to sell and distribute the proceeds in a certain way. So rather than it going directly to the kids, for example, it's actually devised to the executor, who's empowered to sell it and then distribute the proceeds to the kids. That's unusual, I think. And the will has to be worded in a very specific way in order for that to be the result. So in the vast majority of cases, if you're gonna list property that's in an open estate, you're gonna need the administrator to sign, but not only the administrator, you're gonna need to get that, well, if you start at the end and say who's gonna have to sign the deed, that's gonna be the administrator, and it's gonna be the kids, if the kids were inherited the property under the will or under the laws of intestacy, and you need the spouses of those kids to sign as well, unless they may have signed a free trader agreement or a prenup or a postnup that allows their spouse to trade without, to sell and buy real estate without having to have them join. But otherwise, they have to join in the deed as well to release potential marital rights that they have in the property. So if you got 3 kids and they're all married and you've got an administrator, they all have to sign the deed. And if you back it up a step, you want all those people to sign the contract in order to obligate them to sign the deed. And if you back it up a step further, ideally, you would like them all to sign the listing agreement. Certainly the administrator and the kids who are owners, they're, as I said at the outset, they're owners just as surely as if their parent, if it was their parent, deeded them the property. As soon as they died, they become owners. So they really ought to sign the listing agreement. Maybe you can get away without the spouses signing the listing agreement, but I've always advised brokers to have the spouses sign the listing agreement too, because if you're going to have a problem with a spouse, it's better to, I think, find it out on the front end before you get to literally almost the closing table. And we get these questions occasionally, and they're kind of bad questions because the closing attorney who's done the title search has discovered there's somebody else who needs to be joining in the deed. And guess what? They're not going to, and you find this out after the property has been under contract for a long time and people have spent money, they're ready to close. And people start looking at the listing agent and saying, did you know about this? I mean, I think it could be a material fact that you would be expected to disclose if you've got a spouse who's going to have to join in. And so or somebody else. So I think it's better on the front end for the listing agent to try to get those spouses' names on the listing agreement as an indicator that hopefully they'll be cooperative if you're able to procure a buyer. So going back to the question that was posed, it was, is it okay just for if the executor signs the listing agreement and the heirs just sign the deed at closing, is this okay? What do you think my answer to that question would be?
Depends.
Yeah, no, you need to get the, nice try, you need to get the heirs to sign the listing agreement too, in my view. And don't ever, Rick's article says this, listing it in, the estate of John Doe is never correct. Because the estate of John Doe doesn't, own anything. I mean, it's as I said earlier, it's possible that the administrator or the PR was actually deeded the property under the will, but it would never be appropriate to put estate of, fill in the blank in the listing agreement or the contract. Certainly not the deed. So I'm kind of done with my comments. You say there was a question or two?
Yeah, so Marty McLaughlin would like to ask you, Will, if you could share with the group what you know about gap indemnity agreements, that he ran into it last week with a seller and didn't want to sign due to liability, even though ownership had transferred. It was caused by COVID and delay in recordation.
Well, I think I know what the question is about. And I've seen this discussed on a listserv of real properties that I kind of monitor, and I don't do transactional work, so I won't know a whole lot about this, but I think what it's referring to is if there's electronic recording, probably due to COVID, then there's going to be a gap. I did some real estate closings many years ago, and what you do is, and y'all know this as well as I do, the closing attorney gets everything signed, and then you walk over to the courthouse and you do an update before you put it on the record. You've done your preliminary title opinion, and it might have been 2 days before that. Well, something could have happened in those 2 days. And so you need to update, you need to check the various, the judgment indexes and the out conveyances to make sure that the owner hadn't conveyed anything away in the 2 days. And it's rare something comes up, but it does. And so when you're doing recording electronically, there can be a gap there between your search and when you go on. Well, I guess you do a form of update, and this is where, I don't do transactional work anymore, so I don't know exactly. I guess they update it, online, but there's a gap between somebody, I guess, walking into the clerk's office perhaps with something, or in the Register of Deeds office, and that information getting uploaded into the online system at the Register of Deeds office. And so that's the gap that they're talking about.
Real quick, Marty adds to this. He says, the problem is the seller is responsible to defend any new issues, even though he has transferred ownership. It protects the title company.
Yeah, that's what they're asking for. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about a legislative fix for this. And I don't know what the status of that is, but that's how the title insurance companies have been trying to handle that. That's about all I can say, Marty. I'm sorry I don't have a more complete answer to that question.
So just to update everybody, we are about 5 minutes away from our noon time to end for these meetings, but we will carry long if the conversation's still going. I don't know how many more questions you got on your side over there, Will.
Several of them are sort of forms related questions. And I guess I know you all talked about the shocking passing of Garth Dunklin, and you know, that's gonna create a huge void in the forms area, and I'm probably gonna try to step in and help with that process. And some of these look like really recommendations for forms or forms changes that I can share with the Commercial Forms Committee. But there was one here, the last question. If an agency agreement is set to expire while the property is under contract, does it need to be extended? That's a common enough question that we've written a couple of Q&As on that. And those don't have to be displayed, but those are also on the website, probably in the agency section, I would imagine, or maybe under the listing agreement. But so the situation would be, you get the property under contract, and the listing agreement is set to expire between the date of contract and the date of closing. So do you have to get that listing agreement expired? Our view has been that you ought to try to get the seller to agree to an extension, but of course the seller doesn't have to, right? Because that requires mutual consent. And maybe they just don't want to for some reason. Well, many years ago, I spoke with the Real Estate Commission staff about this to see what their concerns might be, because technically there's an argument that you're operating as somebody's broker and you don't have an agreement that allows you to do that anymore because your authority expired or is about to expire. And the Real Estate Commission, I think, has taken a very pragmatic view of that and says, look, we're okay with that. If the transaction is set to close within a reasonable period of time, we're not going to be concerned, and we're not going to discipline an agent, certainly one who has attempted to get an extension of the agency agreement, if the agreement expires before closing and they continue to represent their client to get the transaction closed. We're cool with that. On the other hand, if there's some humongous delay in closing, you've got a lease purchase agreement or something, and it's going to close in a year, and you're still holding yourself out, acting as their agent way beyond the expiration date of the listing agreement, they might not like that. But in the typical transaction, I don't think it's anything to worry about. And as far as entitlement to a commission, your commission is typically earned, at least in a sales contract, when the property goes under contract, and it's payable at closing. And so if it's gone under contract, then your commission is earned. And the fact that the agreement has expired doesn't divest you of that, and it's just a question of when is it payable, and that's at closing. So of course, it depends on the wording of your agency agreement, but I think in our listing agreements, you're going to be protected against, you don't need to be concerned about the seller or the lessor, I guess, taking the position that since the agency agreement expired after contract but before closing, we don't owe you a commission. So that's my answer to that question.
All right, and we'll leave it up to you. If I don't see any more questions in our chat window, we'll base it on what questions you have there. Is there one you feel strongly about answering? And if not, we can give some time back to folks.
Well, let's see here, Jason, excuse me. Well, I'll say that there is one question here, and I'll ask, and heck, I'd be interested in input from you guys on it. Why is there no due diligence period in commercial contracts? How does that get handled? No due diligence fee in commercial contracts. I asked Garth Dunklin that question many years ago. And Garth's answer to me, and the answer I've always given to people who've asked that question, is that in commercial transactions, in most of them or a lot of them, the buyer is going to be paying a significant amount of money in connection with their due diligence. And the idea of asking them to pay a due diligence fee almost seems like kind of like a slap in the face, perhaps. And I believe that if the transaction doesn't close, that the seller is entitled to the results of the buyer's due diligence. So, the seller is getting something, and that's why there hadn't been a due diligence fee added in the commercial contract, as far as I know. That's been my answer. If that's the wrong answer, let me know, and I'll change the answer I've been giving people. But that's what Garth told me. So I went with it because Garth told me.
Any comments from anyone on that? You can post it in the chat box or let us know you'd like to speak, and Anna can add that. Marty McLaughlin, he says 2 thumbs up, correct?
Thumbs up on that answer. Okay, good. I would have, I was going to cover a case. Maybe I could send a summary of it out. I don't know if y'all are interested in that kind of thing. Recent cases. Oh, this one's not recent, but it had to do in a commercial transaction involving about $500,000 commission that wasn't paid because the listing agreement had expired. And it was a very interesting Court of Appeals opinion on that I thought y'all might be interested in. But if time's running short here, I'm happy to, I could just send a summary of it if you're interested in the court opinion.
Totally let that be your call, Will. We've got, I think we could, run long 15 minutes if you want to here, 12:15. But if you want to just share that we can post it in the chat box for people, or follow up at the end of the meeting and give that to them as well, whichever you prefer. Sheila Knight responds to our due diligence question with another correct answer. And she says the due diligence fee was created by the residential folks. Remember, Will?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember Sheila being on that committee for many years too. That's the meeting I just got off of an hour ago. Yeah, I don't know. Just it might take me a while to kind of really set the table with the facts of the case. And so why don't I just, I'll be happy to share it with you all, and you can, push it out to your members of the RCA if you'd like to. And if anybody has questions about it, hey, you can always get in touch with me on the hotline, which is legal hotline at ncrealtors.org is the email address for the hotline.
Yeah, I fully support that to be more search friendly, because I go on there quite frequently looking for things myself. It's a valuable tool, and it's a little difficult to find what you're looking for on there sometimes.
In the Q&As.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a hard time finding them myself, and I wrote the article, and I can't find it. It's very frustrating. And I think they've got a website redesign underway, and hopefully it's going to be the search mechanism will be a lot more robust, because there's a lot of good information there.
Tons of good information. Well, awesome. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions come in. So, Will, we certainly want to, as always, thank you for your expertise and guidance on all these legal questions. We certainly appreciate having you as part of our organization and being able to reach out when these fun issues arise.
Oh, well, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, I think that'll do us for today. I hope everyone has enjoyed our first ever RCA track. That's the end of our programming for today, and we'll be communicating with you about our future meetings. And certainly, if you have any thoughts or insights or speaker suggestions, we're always open to those. So please feel free to pass those along to myself or Nick Scarsey, and we will try to incorporate them. I think that should do us for today.